Might want to pick up a book. All right, so speaking of a book, let's read one called Romans, which is significantly more insightful. One of my favorite guys on Twitter said that there are a lot of elite thinkers and smart people on Twitter, but they are heavily outnumbered. Which is very true. So, last week we talked about being heirs. We talked about really how awesome it is that we have been adopted into the kingdom, that we have been brought in, that we are part of the family, and how, that's not something that really, when talking about guilt, as we've been sort of discussing the last couple of weeks, how really those are not things that really we should be associating with guilt. That we have opportunity to be children of God, and what a tremendous opportunity. He doesn't want us to come into the family feeling guilt. He wants us to come into the family feeling like we belong, like we are a part of the family from day one. And what a tremendous reality that is for us as Christians, and how we should be behaving that way in general as well. So this week we're going to move on, and we're going to get to verse 18. And it says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us." So Paul he's been talking about being an heir. He talks about being a child of God. He talks about adoption into the family. And he talks about, this sort of transition from sort of our carnal, identity to our spiritual identity in God. And then he says this, he says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory which shall be revealed in us." The sufferings of the present time. One of the things that we, a lot of times in life, take a look, take a nice, assessment of is our wins and our losses. We learn from both. I tell, football players all the time, you learn from both. You learn from winning, you learn from losing. You can learn different lessons. I've heard some people say you learn more from losing. I don't know if that's true. But you do learn different lessons from losing. And a good example was, last year we had a tremendous team. We lost a big game in the middle of the year. And our kids responded with anger and frustration and went after it. And then next time we got a shot at it, we took it to them. Because they learned from that loss how much they hated losing. Anybody hate losing? I despise it. As I've gotten older, I've learned that certain things are okay to lose at. Right? I just have. Yesterday we watched somebody flipping out over a church league softball game to the point where it was really actually quite fantastic, and I wish I had a camera. That dude was going nuts. And to me, church softball is not something to get mad at. Co-ed church softball, like I was telling everybody, the team is one step above mini golf for like how much I care, right? It just is, right? Because mini golf, you're kind of like, hey, let's see if I can hit one over the grass and through the river and into the pond. That's kind of how I feel about church. When it comes to coaching, when it comes to leading, I despise losing. I hate it with my whole being, and it's hard. But we learn through our sufferings. We learn lessons. We learn how to overcome things. We learn how to. One of the things I always tell people, as a coach, is the hardest thing to do is beat the same team twice. It's very hard to do in football because the losing team goes home and goes, we got to make some changes. And then they come back to the next game with a whole bunch of changes. The winning team goes home and goes, we got those guys, right? That's what you do. It's just a natural human tendency. And so when they come back, the losing team always has at least, as long as the talent level is close, the losing team always has an advantage because we learn from those losses. But it's hard when someone tells you you're going to learn from a loss, isn't it? I mean, think back when you were younger-ish, and how hard was it for your parents to convince you about the importance of the future? Think back when you were in junior high. You had that deep relationship with someone, right? Think about it. It was big, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, it was huge, right? It was life. You had finally found reason for existence, huh? Your soulmate, and that you love unconditionally. And there's Eric Oestreicher, who's a youth guy. Well, I don't know if he's anymore. I haven't read his book in 20-some years, so I don't know. He's probably a seniors minister now, but he did junior high ministry back in the 80s, and he wrote a book. And one of the things he said in the book is that junior hires don't know how to control their emotion. So when they love absolutely. When you get to be older and you've been hurt a few times, you love with reservation. And you're like, I love you. I don't trust you. That came out. Yeah, I love you as Jesus loves you. And Jesus trusted everybody. So the idea though is that the love sort of just unimpassioned. But you remember that first time when you had that relationship and it just went boom. And every one of us, if your parents were compassionate whatsoever, we're like, it's okay. You know what? You're gonna move on. It's gonna be okay. Someday you're gonna find the right person. Someday they're gonna love you for who you are, zits and all. Right? No, zits maybe just my family. But zits and all, right? They're gonna love you. It's gonna be amazing, right? And you're like, who cares? I don't get it. Or they try to teach you a lesson about, if you show some discipline now, it's much easier later. And you're like, yeah, but I don't want to show discipline now, right? I want to eat that whole pie. I'll accept whatever comes, right? Because you have no concept of the future. And one of the things that, Paul says that our present sufferings don't compare to the glory that we have in God. But for a lot of us as Christians, we look at our present sufferings and they're huge. And somebody walking up to us, putting their arm around us going, heaven's going to be better. Does that help? Like, how many of you have ever had something like that said to you? I have. Well, Jesus suffered too. Great. I'm better. Right? And then you're like, this is the best. Walking, leaping. Anyway, the idea is that, it never really seems to matter about what the long-term rewards are. Especially when you're young. Now, as you get older and you start getting some life under your belt, you get some wins and losses, suddenly you start looking at a little bit of the longer term, the shorter term. So maybe don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But the idea that we have this idea that it just doesn't really jive a whole lot. And so when Paul says that your present sufferings are nothing in comparison, for a lot of us it doesn't really. And our present sufferings are rough. And when someone puts their arm around you and says, don't worry, it's going to get better. I remember, and I really don't know what the issue was, because I had a fantastic mullet, but I couldn't get a date in high school, right? I had this one girl who would date me off and on, but that was just bad news. And I remember my mom one time, this is no joke, my mom's a sweetheart-ish, and she put her arm around me and she goes, college girls are much, because they care about the inside.
Great.
That's not a compliment at all. Because what's it saying? I get that the outside of you is unappealing, son. So hopefully someday the inside will win them over. What? And that was her way of trying to get me to cut my hair, I think, but I didn't even phase me. Because I knew I had to go. But the idea that we have this, that we always feel like sometimes throwing that future out there is going to help us feel better, but for a lot of us, it doesn't really make any sense because we don't have a context for it. Now, for some of us looking back on some of those experiences, and we look at our kids and we tell them, oh no, it's going to be okay. How do I know it's going to be okay? Because I've been through it. But that doesn't really help. It doesn't make them feel better. It doesn't really bring it around. This idea that somehow the completion of righteousness in heaven, nothing you're going through now compares. It's true. But at the same time, it's hard for a lot of us to sort of pick up and walk and sort of drop that bag of hope in the future. It's difficult. And even though that in the end, ultimately we go through this tremendous opportunity of glory and reward, and it's going to be worth it, for a lot of us, we're like, it's going to be awesome. I remember my son's first year of playing football, and he was on this tremendous team. And you guys remember there's a song called Hall of Fame. It was really big, and it was by the Script. Is that right? Script? Okay. And then will.i.am was the rapper, right? Okay. I know things. I know some things. But anyway, so there's a song called Hall of Fame, right? And that whole song was about you can do anything, and someday you'll be in the Hall of Fame. And I remember watching all these little 9 and 10-year-olds just singing that song, like, I'm going to the Hall of Fame, and all his dads are like, no, you're good, buddy. Right? And it's like, if I work hard enough, I can get to the Hall of Fame. And you're like, I gotta be honest with you, I don't think it matters how much I work. I love you, buddy, but lift some weights. But there's this idea that somehow we throw this future reward out, and it's exciting, but the amount of work it takes to get across that chasm is huge. And in life, that work is sort of the suffering, it's the weight that comes along with life, because, our distractions and our sufferings can be so overwhelming. Sometimes we just are overwhelmed by distractions, we're overwhelmed by suffering, and when we hear something as awesome as, hey, the sufferings of this life don't compare to the future reward, we're like, that's great, but I gotta be honest, the sufferings are hard. And sometimes we overlook it, but the sufferings are difficult. The sufferings really push us down. And Paul at this point is not diminishing the gravity of those sufferings. This is not one of those verses that's supposed to be, oh, don't worry, this life's cake. That reward is so awesome, don't worry about it. That's not what he means. He's drawing a comparison in sort of how they compare to each other, but not meaning to diminish the sufferings of this life. I know people who skip through life, and it's amazing. Stuff's flying around them, their life is a tornado, and they're like, I'm just happy as can be. And I'm thinking, what are you on? Do you not see what's going on around you? Do you not see it? This is not Paul saying that's how Christians should be. This is not Paul going, you shouldn't really care if your life's falling apart. Because he calls them sufferings, right? If you're not paying attention, or you're apathetic to your sufferings, or you're apathetic to things going on around you, or you're a psychopath, you're not suffering. The reality is you're just coasting through. True sufferings, when we think of the tears of Christ, right? Crying in the garden as he's dealing with the weight of life. I think all of us have been to that, at least definitely once in junior high, right? At least we've been with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane at least once in junior high, right? It's over. This is horrible. We've been there once in high school, probably a year. If you had a mullet. And then once in college. But we've all been down those roads where that weight becomes so heavy it begins to crush us down. And weird. I have to look right at time of flash. But the idea is the goal of life is to subject you to its authority. Life wants to beat you down. Life is going to beat you down. The famous philosopher Rocky Balboa pointed it out. It's one of my favorite speeches ever. I listen to it all the time. It's just the truth. It's going to beat on you, it's going to grind on you, it's going to push you, because the reality is that we live, and I'm going to bring this up at the very end, we live in a temporal world. Everything's temporary. Everything's living and dying. Everything. If that's the case, if you live in a world where everything passes except for plastic, everything passes, the reality is you're going to lose. If you live in a world where everything dies, you're going to lose. If you live in a world where everyone who lives in that world knows that they're going to lose, you're going to lose. Because it's going to beat you down. Now, you're going to go through periods in life where that's not the case. And then, you're going to go through periods of life where, man, it seems like the world is crashing down around you. And I've shared this in church quite a few times, but my mom always used to say in church that that pain and suffering, she was a hospice chaplain, so she's seen a lot of it. The pain and suffering is like a green Mercury car now. I'm obviously speaking to those in the room over the age of 30, when Mercury was still a thing. But it was like a green Mercury car that everybody goes, I want to go get a green Mercury because I don't know anybody who owns a green Mercury, right? You look all over the city and you find one, it's in the back corner of a lot. You're like, yes, I got a green Mercury. You take that green Mercury out for a spin. What's the first thing you see at the first stop sign you come to? Green Mercury, right? That's just the reality of it, is that now your context has changed and now you're seeing things different. That green Mercury's always been there, probably in your neighborhood. But the reality is now your context has changed because you're looking for it. In life, tragedy and difficulty and pain are a lot like that, where we go through these periods of time where it just seems like, man, life, everybody I know is dying. I mean, I'm not old by any stretch. I've lost a lot of friends in the last 5 years. And it's amazing. It's amazing. I remember my parents sitting there talking about everybody dying, you know, and thinking, oh wow, you guys are old, everyone you know is dying. And now here I am, you know, and I'm thinking, man, I have so many friends from my childhood who are passing away. I'm not talking about people who were my friends' parents. I've lost a lot of friends in the last 5 years. And you start, man, it just seems like suffering's coming at you all the time, but we live in a world that's passing away. We live in a world that's dying at the same time as living. So we're going to suffer heavy, heavy pain. We're going to suffer the consequences of life. We're going to suffer throughout our lives. And life wants to subject you to its authority. Life wants you so focused on the pain. Life wants you so focused on the sufferings that you don't become, that you're not any good. That all you do is sit around and struggle and refuse to get back up. Refuse to, you know, like Rocky says, keep moving forward. And then Paul kind of goes into two little mini examples that we'll talk about today. Two little mini examples. The first one is creation. He says, for the earnest expectation of creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. Interesting sentence. So creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. Creation wants the rapture. Creation wants revelation. Creation longs for revelation. Now, keep in mind, he's not talking about us as a part of creation at this point. He's talking about creation. It says, for the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, okay, but because of him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. So, that's a packed section. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly. The reality is creation is not subjected willingly. If you think it is, you don't own a home with a lawn. Right? How many walk out, look at that weed, and just go, back off, bro? What happens if you leave for 3 days? Does creation go, nope, we're going to listen? No. Creation is not subjected willingly whatsoever. But basically God subjected it to us. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. All of creation. Now, to me, there's really sort of three basic looks at the way we think of creation as Christians, okay? First of all, is my personal favorite, right? This is the way I see it. And I've shared this with you many times. This is the Garden of Eden. It's just Adam sitting there petting his tiger, hanging out with his lady and talking to Jesus. That's exactly what it was. I don't care what you think it was. This is creation, right? So a lot of us can think of that when we think of what Paul's talking about. Creation. Creation groans. Creation struggles. Okay, but then there's more of a globalist view, right? So this is sort of more of a standard view I think a lot of Christians take. I realize that mine is probably more of a niche. Okay? But me and the guy who created that picture probably. Someone telling me that dude's not healthy. So we have this idea, right? We have this global view of creation. So when we think creation, when I say the word creation, most of you have whatever you image that of. Okay? Whether, it be the trees and the animals and the lakes and the hills and the mountains and the seas and the rivers and the streams and all this beautiful thing. If you're a hiker, you probably have, some mountaintop in mind. Oh, the blessedness of creation. Whatever works, whatever you're thinking of. But the reality is that creation gets even bigger. Right? Creation moves way beyond a global view. Creation moves way beyond a solar system. You start getting into the view of the universe when you talk about creation. And just the mighty mysteries of creation that go so far beyond. I was explaining geometrically with Marcus yesterday about why we see horizons the way we see them and how our angle of observation works and how we can only see so far because of that angle. You know, when you start thinking in terms of sort of a spiritual angle, when you start thinking in terms of a universal creation, it's amazing, isn't it? It is wild, the stuff that we have flying around right now. When you start thinking of the asteroid belts and the comets and the, meteors, the meteorites, the meteoroids, which all depend on location, by the way. All these amazing things, right? And you think of gravity, which we can explain, but really can't explain. I'm not sure what. Right? You start thinking about all these amazing things. And you start thinking about the massive nature of creation. And how creation itself wants to thrive on its own. And how nature itself, creation itself, is basically being subjected to the will of others. And it doesn't want to accept that. When you think of what we do with creation, when you think of how sometimes our view is so limited, when creation, we have this sort of micro view of creation. When we have this small little idea of what it means to sort of the design of God's hand from a universal point of view. Ours is so small sometimes. And so when Paul says that all of creation is crying out, I don't know what that image is, but think about it from the point of a universe. That it's crying out from basically being held, like Einstein said, within rules. The idea that the entire universe is governed by a set of mandates. And how it wants to fly out, but it can't. And so then you take those two things, and you take the groans of creation and your present sufferings, and you start thinking of them in terms of a bigger picture. And you think of your sufferings contextually, right? They're huge to me. But think about the sufferings and the groans of creation holistically. Doesn't even register, right? You got to go back to, that our solar system is that little dot over there. So we have this, so Paul is sort of creating this heavy, comparison. And then he goes into the second little one. And he says, not only that. So Paul somehow, in a matter of just a couple of sentences, explains how the universe is crying out. And then he goes, and not only that, right? Oh, not only the universe is crying out. That's kind of big, right? Not only that seems like a minor transition to a pretty major point of view, right? And it just doesn't seem, it doesn't seem right. But anyway, so then he says, not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves. There is a whole lot of groaning going on suddenly around the universe, right? The universe is groaning with the birth pangs, and you are groaning within yourself, inside the universe that's groaning because of you. Ooh, circle of life. What's up, John? We ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body, for we were saved in this hope. But hope that is seen is not hope. For why does one still hope for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see. We eagerly wait for it with perseverance. We don't hope for what we see, right? I don't hope that's a chair, right? It's a chair. I don't hope. I mean, I hope that it holds me. That's a different kind of hope. But I don't hope that it's a chair. I accept that it's a chair. But see, now he says, listen, there is this sort of groaning from within us for heaven and for the redemption of our bodies. As Christians, talking about the role that the Holy Spirit plays, and those of us who are the first fruits, those of us who are saved, and the reality is that Holy Spirit should be crying from within us for change. So there's a groaning within us that makes us feel in a weird way of almost not belonging. We should be looking forward to the end. And there's a crying out, because the truth is that we're a stranger in a foreign land. One of the things that's always been sort of an interesting dichotomy and battle, I think, amongst Christians has always been that we're trying to change our land. But we are citizens of heaven. The Bible says that our citizenship has been sort of, we have dual citizenship, but it's been transitioned. Our goal is to take as many people from this land and move their citizenship. That's our goal. But a lot of times we're trying really, really hard to govern and to politically change things and to make them shift to our theology, when really, from a biblical point of view, we ourselves are foreigners. We ourselves are, migrant. We ourselves are, in some cases, refugees, right? Because we don't belong. We have a different set of standards. We have a different way to look at things. We have a different view of really eternality. We have a different view of our worldview is based on our faith. That in and of itself should make us feel, more often than not, a little bit uncomfortable in this world. The Bible says that we're supposed to be in it and not of it. Well, you can be in it. I remember, I don't know how many countries I've been to. I have never felt of anywhere but here. Right? I spent a few months in Australia. That's probably the closest. Europe, Sri Lanka, Africa. I never felt of anywhere. I was in it. I remember, being in Africa, Tanzania, and being out there in that little boma. As much as I loved it, as much as I thought it was the greatest thing in the world that no one could get a hold of me, no cell phone service out there, except for up on the hill. But what as much as I loved it, I was never of it. And it doesn't matter how much people wanted to make me feel welcome. I was never of it. For as long as I was, in Europe, I never felt of anywhere. I was in it, but I never felt of it. And as much as it doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. It doesn't mean I didn't have a great time. I had a blast in Australia. Australians are phenomenal. They are the country hits of the Southern Hemisphere. They are tremendous people. They're America the way I like to think of America. Right? Like, wow, we got it. I don't think that's a good idea. But it's a pioneering spirit's amazing. But it's just, I never felt of. And I think as a Christian, we're really supposed to feel that same way all the time. That we're really not of this group. That there should be a part of us that is constantly groaning for getting up on out of here. You guys are like really laboring this point. I'd like to get up on out of here so get hurt. But we want to get to that, I want up, I want out, I want to move on. I got work to do. I got to get things finished. I have a mission. I have purpose. I have value in this place. Man, I'm not of it. I got to go. I want to get up and I want to go. And I think there's supposed to be a part of us that feels the same way. Creation wants to be free from what we have subjected it to. You can't tell me that creation loves what we're doing to it. The fact that it's being subjected to our will does not make it go, no, it's cool, we're with you. It's actually fighting against, right? I know, don't worry, we'll get into global warming. It's fighting against. The reality is that it's being subject to our will. And I think it's that same kind of, I don't think this isn't right, I gotta go, I gotta move. It's that same sort of groaning that drives us spiritually. That we are constantly realizing that we don't quite fit. I think if we start to feel like we fit, that's where we have gotten a little bit confused. That's where, like I always say, Americans struggle because our patriotism and our salvation are very heavily intertwined because of the history of our great nation. Is that we have a lot of problems sometimes separating those two because we're sort of raised, especially if you're raised in the South, right? You're raised in the South, it's God, family, country, right? And I think one of the things is that we're not supposed to have that linkage. We're supposed to be separate. We're supposed to be longing. Because if you don't have that longing, then the idea of reward is irrelevant. If your whole goal in life, if you feel like God's greatest blessing to you is 2.5 kids, 1.5 cars, and a white picket fence, then the reality is you're missing, you're linked to the wrong thing. And so we should be constantly feeling that groaning for getting up out of here, because then that reward is relevant even in the midst of our terrible sufferings, even in the midst of things that hurt. And it's not meant to sort of be Christian cliche, right? Like, we have a lot of times that, we cliche it up, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to be people who say, no, it's okay. Jesus is still on the throne. Right? If you're a Pentecostal. Right? It's okay. God's on the throne, hallelujah. And you're going, it doesn't feel like that right now. I really want it. I know that's true. Right? But it hurts. It's not just meant to be cliche. Paul's not talking in a cliche here. He's not saying you should just walk up to somebody who's suffering and go, but heaven's going to be rocking. Right? It's not going to help. He's not meaning to, he's not diminishing the suffering. So reward in and of itself, this idea that you're going to have this sort of redemption of your body, you're going to be brought to full righteousness, is awesome. It's not meant to diminish reality here. Jesus cried, right? Jesus cried when he saw the crowd that was lost like a sheep without a shepherd. And the Bible says he was moved with compassion. He was hurting. He suffered with them. So it doesn't mean that we're supposed to be, no, it's cool, no big deal, I got heaven. No, it's not how it works. It means you're supposed to hurt. But it means that, that the reality is we get tied to temporal things. We love people. Hopefully you're not getting tied to temporal things, right? But there are. But, the reality is we love people. We have a relationship, but ultimately we lose everybody. And so the reality is we have to accept that there's going to be pain. There's going to be hurting. And that's my whole point about when everything is temporal, pain is inevitable. When everything is temporary, when everything is physical, when everything is earthly that surrounds you in your life, pain is inevitable. And we're going to hurt. And if you haven't hurt yet, you're going to at some point. If you haven't hurt yet, wow. Right? But you're going to at some point. Some point, something very important to you is just going to be shredded away. And it's just the reality. But that suffering, as difficult as it is that our reward is secured ultimately in the celestial realm. It's in the heavens. That God has gone to prepare a place that cannot be touched by the decay of temporary things. So that all of the pain you feel now is nothing in comparison to the glory that you're going to feel there. Spend hours on that sentence. Your glory will be glorious. The idea that we
hours on it, look at it.
Our glory will be glorious.
Our wild.
Oh! I need to apologize to Jesus. I was too busy in the spirit to focus correctly. Helium. Way to try that, Becky. I'm impressed. All right, so we're going to ignore the glorious part. The idea that we have this sort of comparison of glory and suffering is real to us. But it means that they're not going to compare. That how awesome is it going to be to know that it's there forever? And I love, Paul's point on creation, that it will be rejuvenated too. That creation, okay, now think of it. Think about what Paul says about creation. Why is creation groaning? Because it's subject, right? But creation itself is going to be regenerated, right? That's what he says. So if it's going to be regenerated, it's going to be not subject. How awesome is creation going to be then? How cool is that, right? Adam in the garden, and the tiger, right? It has to be at this point. I've put God on notice at this point. Right? The encouragement is not meant to be, a reminder for when sufferings come. It's not meant to be cheesy like that. It's supposed to be a reminder to store those victories in our memories for when others are suffering. Store those victories in your life. Store those sufferings away. What you learned, absolutely. Be there, be with others. But as Christians, you're going to always be in turmoil of you should be somewhere else, but you're here. You should be moving on, but you're here. You got work to do in this world, but you're never really a part of it. And if you're not a part of it, there should be a groaning inside of you. There should be a lack of feeling that you belong. And sharing your story. The first time I ever really left the country was when I was in college and I went to Europe. And I remember getting off the plane in Brussels and walking out and realizing I got nothing. Right? No, I don't know what any signs say. I don't know what that business is. I don't know anything. And I remember walking until I found the McDonald's and realizing everything was going to be okay. But it's true. But it's like, but it just never feels. You always feel like when people look at you, you don't belong, right? That's how I feel when I'm in other countries. I always feel like I'm like an American, right? Trying really hard to live Canadian. But we do. We have this thing where we always feel, but that's really us as Christians on earth. We should stand out. What does Peter say we should be? A peculiar group. Does anybody have anybody in your life you know is peculiar? Right? They stand out, right? A little bit. Maybe socially, physically, whatever. I mean, they're peculiar. Maybe the way they dress. Maybe the way they dress. It's just part of stepping out. So, the point of this is simply don't be concerned with feeling too much. It's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to suffer. This verse is not meant to tell you don't worry about it. This section is meant to tell you that all the universe groans with you. Everything's in pain. Everything. Even whatever is pretending it's not. It's in pain. A flower in spring, it's dead by fall. As beautiful as it is, right? It's tough. So, we are going to close in prayer. I'll have fellows do the offering for me real quick as we close in prayer. There's a list of announcements at the bottom of your little paper. This Friday night, the Women's Fellowship is here at 6:30. Nailed it. And then there's men's breakfast on Saturday morning, right here. It is good food, good chance to chat and have a good time. And then obviously we have food coming up. We have movie night. A few other things as we kind of finish out summer. So let's pray. Father, we just thank you so much for today. God, I thank you for your word. I thank you for your servant Paul and his tremendous acumen. He's just mental ability to just take in so much and be able to just put it down in writing for us. And God, I just thank you for that. And God, I pray your blessing over the offering. I pray your integrity over every penny that comes in. May we have a phenomenal week of ministry and probably try to do our best to stay inside. In your name. Amen. All right. So Chris is going to pass those around. And then you guys are free to enjoy the heat. It's supposed to be 104 today.
Okay.